Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters at CoolStuffing.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and check out our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And check out our altar sleeves. Support the show using the code MAGICMICS at checkout for 5% off anything in that store. I am Evan Erwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys.
Reuben Bresler.
Hey, good evening.
It's a wonderful day, right? In frigid Orlando.
Yeah, you're experiencing weather, which is interesting.
This is not.
Wow.
It's January. I'm like actually cold. This is weird. I don't know what's going on there.
Wearing a sweatshirt in the house.
I know, right?
Wild.
This is insane.
I'm surprised you own one.
I know, right? I bought this from like one of the tourist traps or whatever because it was cheap and like
because you're in Orlando and you make Magic content. It's very funny. I get
it's
it.
on brand, everybody.
Yeah.
Look, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Reuben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 2022 wish list picks, I guess. Reuben?
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of great entries. We had a lot of great suggestions, and we had a lot of great wishes from people. But I wanted to go with 8th place Dave, not just for that username, but also because they said one thing that nobody mentioned was the inclusion of arena codes in regular booster packs. I think it's something that has been discussed on the show previously, but not recently. I haven't played much arena lately, but I feel like getting a code in a booster pack, or just having the chance to get a code in a booster pack, would help to keep me and other people interested in the game. I think having codes appear in a similar frequency to cards from the list would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we could argue that this touches lightly on the biggest topic I think that we spent the most time on, and that's the economy being trash.
Yeah.
Giving players more access to in-game product in other avenues other than just give me your credit card would help with that economy issue in general. So that would be one way we could get something really cool integrated into the game while also keeping people, from burning out from cost.
Yeah. I
mean, it's this idea is like something that, it sort of came out from day one. It's already existed in Pokemon for a very long time. And even though Pokemon is going to turn to a more arena-based client, as far as I understand it, they're not getting rid of the codes. They still want to give you codes to push you towards that digital client. It just seems weird to know, like, for a fact, Wizards makes the majority of their money off paper. And I mean, it's not even close. Like, seriously, they go, oh man, the profit margin is just ridiculous. Digital Magic Arena, Magic Online, costs a lot of money to upkeep those, those ventures. And that stuff, is not cheap. But regardless, to be able to put something in those booster packs that kind of connects those two worlds seems like obvious. In some ways they do. They do have the new player starter decks that you get when you log into Arena and you can redeem a code and get them that way. But like, boost that, you know what I mean? Like, Let's keep going. Like, wouldn't it be awesome?
This is a marketing tool that people have been using since the internet existed. Like, you unscrew a Pepsi cap and there's a code to enter at Pepsi.com from the 80s. Like, this is not new technology. So it is wild that, I guess it is true that the starter decks do have like starter deck codes, but
and the pre-release packs give you some packs on Arena.
Yeah,
but again,
the connection is so tenuous. Like,
right, you're kind of halfway in it, and it's weird that you don't just go all the way.
Right.
Yeah, they're actually dialing it back a lot. Degenerate Gaming just got a new sponsor, GVG Games, Great Viking Games, and they sell digital codes from Secret Lairs, the pre-order packs, things like that. Mm-hmm. And we had, several long meetings, and one of the things we talked about was the fact that since Arena has come out, they've scaled back their code giving drastically. Not just the free codes, but also some of the Secret Lairs aren't coming with them where they all did before. Mm-hmm. Some of the like dual decks and things are no longer coming out with codes. So yeah, he was talking about how there is less access to codes, and if that trend continues, business models like his own would become obsolete. So yeah, they have been moving away from that, unfortunately, where I hope they go further into it.
And also just sort of, like anti-consumer sounds a little rough, right? Sounds a little bad, but like it seems kind of crappy that you can only redeem one pre-release kit on your account, period. Like if I paid for 3 or 4 of them, I feel like I've earned on the digital side of things regardless. But, like, I guess you're just really afraid of somebody abusing it, even though now you can no longer turn anything you get in the game to money, like, unless you sell your account on eBay, which is against terms of service.
Which is still illegal.
Yada, yada.
I think the issue is not that they're not wanting to give you extra value with your booster pack. They're wanting to get extra value from you from getting you to log onto Arena for the first time, which if you're doing that more than once, you're no longer giving them that additional value. So it's not supposed to be a gift to you. It's supposed to be a hook to get you in.
Right.
And you only need one hook for that to work.
Right.
Which is really sad and unfortunate that they're doing it in that way.
As they say, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, congratulations.
See what the segue is.
8th place, Dave. I know I've been 9th place, Evan, one too many times in my life. I'm just saying. But please contact us on social media for your prize. That's Twitter, that's Facebook, that's Reddit. Thanks again to CoolStuffing.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week. And maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because it's time to talk about the top 10 pests. The pests,
bugs.
The bugs and pests, right? It's pests.
So insects, spiders, and pests.
Yes, that's the 3.
And like worms, I guess. I was debating.
Looking at that, but all the worms are big, so they're not really a pest.
Right.
Well, WORM, not WURM. Yeah. Or WYRM for that matter. I guess you could also, I don't know what a sapperling is, really.
I decided they were a plant and excluded them.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, they're
fungal based,
plants, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here to number 10. Reuben, get us started. What is your number 10?
All right, I'm ready for my first several picks to get me eye rolls. I understand this. However, my number 10, I almost put it my number 1 because it is the bug that has ended the most games of Magic. It is the bug that has the most tournament pedigree. It is one of the most terrifying creatures in all of Magic, and it revamped an entire couple of archetypes in Legacy and was dominant in Standard. I don't think Delver of Secrets is a particularly good card, but Insectile Aberration is a very good card.
Oh.
Hey, listen. Creature type human insect.
Yeah.
What are we here to do?
It's an insect. Go
ahead.
All
Insectile Aberration is the backside of Delver of Secrets. It's a 3/2 flyer. That's what it is. I'm not going to tell you what Delver of Secrets is. That card's bad. That card's a Wandering Ones. It's a 1/1.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what Delver of Secrets does later.
Fine. Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
you had it on.
Not everyone realizes there's 2 sides and two different names to the sides.
All right.
I just decided that the whole thing was a bug, even though the backside is the only one that says it. So I'm with you here. I've got Delver of Secrets on my list.
Got it.
Continue.
We'll get there.
Well, yeah, Insectile Aberration is my number 10.
Goodness. Nerd Girl, what's number 10?
Yes. So my number 10 this is one of the first times I'm going to do the Reuben thing. This is not a top tier, whatever, Pro Tour, blah, 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 blah. This is the bug card that started it all. When you think about pests, what do you think about? Tokens. I think of pesky little go wide tokens and insects, and nothing brings that to mind more than a token. So I decided to go with the very first token generator created in Magic, which also incidentally creates insect tokens, and that is the HIVE.
Nice.
From all the way back in Alpha.
Yeah, so this is the very first token generator. Nothing else in the original sets did. So the HIVE is a 5 mana artifact for 5, and then for 5 mana and tap, put a 1/1 insect artifact token with flying named Wasp into play. And that is it. It just poops out a bunch of little things. We had a similar one later with like an Ornithoptery one, the Thopter generator. But this is the HIVE. It started it. It makes tokens and pests and bugs and everything.
Well, no, like I do think, first of all, because it's always funny to read the super old cards, and also they did actually change a little bit about how this card worked. Yeah. The HIVE originally in limited edition Alpha was a mono artifact. That meant you had to tap it when you used it. So it just says 5 generic mana : doesn't say 5 mana tap. That came later.
Right, because it's a mono artifact.
Right, but for your 10 mana, eventually it creates one giant wasp, a 1/1 flying creature. Represent wasps with tokens, making sure to indicate when each wasp is tapped. Wasps can attack during the turn created. Treat wasps like artifact creatures in every way, except that they are removed from the game entirely if they ever leave play, and if the HIVE is destroyed, the wasps must be killed individually.
Yeah, the wasps must be killed individually is very confusing terminology.
Yeah. So they don't want to
Does that mean when the hive dies, the wasps die? I don't.
Yeah. You have to kill your whole team that you
doesn't
made.
help.
You paid 10 mana for that 1/1. I disenchant that, you lose both.
Yeah. Yeah. The hive has had quite a few upgrades. I think that there was a 4 mana one that you paid 3 mana to tap to make a 1/1 flyer.
Something like that.
In Kaladesh. We've also had Volrath's Laboratory. I mean, not to mention Phyrexian Processor. Like, we've had... Silicon Makers have come a long way, but the Hive is the OG.
Like, this is one of those things... So. I'm glad that it exists, right? It shows where we've come from.
Got to start somewhere.
And yeah, we got to start somewhere on making 1/1 flyers. Well, speaking of starting somewhere, my number 10 was chosen specifically for a particular reason. I hate the reserve list, and the reserve list sucks, and it definitely came through on my most recent Forgotten Lore video. If you haven't seen that, you should go check it out. But reserve list takes cards away from us, which sucks. But the thing is, I lived in a world before that even existed. And I lived in a world where Wizards said, you know what? Like, some of the really powerful stuff we're not going to reprint, but some of like the silly, goofy stuff that the casual players want, let's reprint that. It won't be a big deal. We'll print that. We'll put it in a set called Chronicles. And Chronicles pissed off the collectors so bad that they made the reserve list as part of a response to it. And one of the cards that was called out specifically at the time, and it always cracks me up, people were seriously mad. How dare they reprint Killer Bees? Killer Bees was like the bridge too far in Legends, which these days is $58, which ain't bad, but for 4th edition, it's a quarter. So, do your own math there. But either way, Killer Bees was 2 green and generic mana for a 0/1 flyer with 1 green colon. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That was a rare, and people were excited about it. And people were pissed that they were going to reprint it. I
love the art on Killer Bees the most.
It made my short list for the art.
It's so cool.
It was one of the few that got the cut. It's adorable. I cannot tell you how much I love it. There's one of the creature collections where they have a bee with a little button on it that I also really like. So yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
They shouted it out again with Unyaro bees in Time Spiral or in Planar Chaos, maybe.
I think it was Time Spiral.
Was it Time Spiral? But anyway, pay a green mana, make it bigger. That's pretty good. Not bad.
3 mana for the 0/1 flyer, everybody. But it's Killer Bees. It's super sweet. Moving to number 9. Reuben, what you got?
My number 9 is the cornerstone of one of, if not the most beloved draft archetypes of all time. It is, at least maybe amongst draft aficionados, I know that Marshall Sutcliffe and Brian David Marshall in particular were all about spider spawning when spider spawning decks were draftable in the original Innistrad. 4 generic and a green sorcery with flashback of 6 generic and a black. Create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach for each creature card in your graveyard. This, of course, was big in the bug, blue, black, green self-mill decks of the time. Things like Armored Scab and Forbidden Alchemy being able to put things like this into your graveyard.
Yeah, this is like its own weird little archetype. Like, I'll be honest, my experience with this card is that if you play this card and you're like getting ahead, you've probably already won the game. Like, if 1/2 spiders are going to like really turn the corner, then you probably already have that game in the bag.
No, I don't think so.
I
don't think you've played with spider spawning enough. I don't think typically what happens in that deck is you trade a lot.
Right.
You play your Boneyard Worm and you play your Scabs and you play whatever, and then you 1/1, 1/1, 1/1.
Trade mill.
And then you make 7 1/2s after you've grinded it out the entire game, and then you win the game with your spiders.
And then you make 7 more.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Card's great.
Nerd Girl, what's number 9?
So my number 9 is my last of the iconic. We started with the one that started it all in the Hive. So now we're just going to go straight into number 9, which I think is one of the most recognizable spiders that you find all over the place, but isn't necessarily good. So it's gonna get a low-ish spot here, and that's Giant Spider.
Yep.
Nice.
This 4 mana spider for 3 and a green. It is a 2/4 with reach. That's it. It's very simple. It's got the iconic spider butt, and we play a ton of these in Limited, and we're typically very happy to have them because in these types of sets, there's always 2/2 flyers for 3, and this comes down, and we're very happy.
I mean, this is the OG. I mean, this is the first spider. This helped define what spider's supposed to do around before the reach keyword even existed. This was, I believe it was, if not the longest, it was tied with the longest amount of card that had been in print from alpha to the time it stopped being in print with giant growth.
So
being
this
in
is
standard.
this is the creature that set the record.
Yeah.
It was in every core set until M12.
Right. And then it was in standard until like whatever the end of course set 2019
Right.
was, I guess. But yeah, and then Mammoth Spider kind of took it over from there. But you know, this is one of those like classic, the numbers are kind of perfect. The ability's fantastic. It's evocative. It makes sense. It's very kind of green in that way. And it's wonderful.
Spiders have reach, and that's because of Giant Spider. Yeah.
That's magic. All right. Well, I also have a spider on my number 9. It's not quite as sort of iconic, but it is very powerful. And it was powerful kind of for its day. It was honestly kind of sort of surprising because, you know, I grew up in a world of giant spiders, and I grew up in a world, you know, when the magic was fair and the mana costs were high. And to give me more or less the same type of mana cost, but to give me another copy of it was incredible on Penumbra Spider from Time Spiral for 2 green and 2 generic mana. So 4 mana for a 2/4 common spider. It can block as though it had flying, even though this reach wasn't around in Time Spiral yet. It must have been right there. But when Penumbra Spider is put into a graveyard from play, you put a 2/4 black spider creature token into play that can block as though it had flying. So it's 2 giant spiders for the price of 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Penumbra creatures were originally from Apocalypse, I want to say.
Sounds right.
You had Penumbra Bobcat and Penumbra Worm, and I think
Penumbra
another one.
Kavu
was like a 3/3 for 5, probably.
Yep, and it made a 3/3 when it died.
Right, and it makes a shadow version of itself, right? So it's a
Right.
green creature that makes a black creature after it dies. That's kind of what the word Penumbra means, is sort of the umbra of the spider coming back. This one was just a classic callback to that effect and the spider. Shove them together. There you go.
Wonderful. Let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, what's your rate?
My number 8 is maybe the most like bug-centric bug card on my list. And if a spell said counter target insect, spider, or pest spell, this could target it. But if you had destroy target insect, spider, or pest, you could not target it. Because Grist the Hunger Tide is an insect in every zone that isn't the battlefield.
Oh my god.
A generic, a black, and a green gets you a legendary planeswalker. Grist starts with loyalty of 3. As long as Grist the Hunger Tide isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. Just appreciate that sentence and how mind-blowing that is even now. Now that this was in Modern Horizons 2, and it was still a wild sentence to read. +1, make a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill a card. If an insect was milled in this way, like for example another copy of Grist, put a loyalty counter onto Grist and repeat this process. -2, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. And -5 is the ultimate. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard.
That is definitely a pest. I did not even take this one into consideration. It's like new enough to where, you know, I didn't get to play much of the set, so actually. So yeah, that's news to me. Good call putting that on the list, I think.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine like a kid on Christmas morning when like the designer runs into the rules manager's office and is like, "Can we do this? Could we actually say it's an insect in every other zone but the battlefield?" And they're like, "Yes, you can do this." They're like, "Oh my god!" And like they skip back to the R&D halls and they make the magic cards, and it's wonderful and everyone has fun.
It's a great little sentence that allows Birthing Pod Green Sun Zenith, for example, in Legacy. I've definitely seen this in Maverick lists. There's some really interesting things that you can do with this.
Just so silly, you can't counterspell it with certain things, but you can with other things.
You can, now let me read the word.
You can remove soul.
Can you both remove soul and negate it?
You can't spell pierce it. Nope.
Okay, so it counts as only a creature while on the stack. That's awesome.
I mean, technically, in addition to its other types, but it does specify non-creature spell, right?
Non-creature, yes.
Right.
So it would be creature spell, or if it was like a planeswalker spell, counter-target planeswalker spell.
Right.
Still, I mean, the design is super cool. Just absolutely awesome.
Nerd Girl, what's your rate?
My number 8 is my first hire.
Oh, no. All right. Well, that's cool. Well, I have a number 8. It's cool and it's super gross. All right. It's super duper gross. This is one of those when we did our top 10, like super gross cards or whatever. This definitely saw some mention and some discussion. This card was super duper good in the sort of the mesmeric fiend-esqueness of it. But instead of mesmeric fiend, it is a brain maggot.
Mm-hmm.
Brain Maggot came to us in Journey into Nyx. It is an uncommon 1/1 enchantment creature insect, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, and you choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card until Brain Maggot leaves the battlefield.
Yeah. First of all, gross. I hate the art. I hate looking at the art. I hate it. Second of all, this card was seeing a lot of play in competitive decks of the day, primarily in Constellation decks, but was also popular in, I think that the Sidisi deck liked it. And then in Pioneer, it is a choice piece of disruption for those Delirium decks because it has 2 card types.
It was playable in Limited, and I think the art is actually kind of cool. I don't hate it nearly as much as you do. I think as far as a bug goes, it looks pretty spiffy. Most Constellation type cards do, though, I think. Yeah,
that's kind of I guess you would describe it as body horror in some ways, to just have a giant, gross thing crawling into your ear.
Yeah.
Shiver.
Wasn't there a scene in, I want to say, The Wrath of Khan?
Yes, that's what he uses to control.
That's the one I'm thinking of, where there's a bug that crawls into your face. Yeah, I hate that thing.
Yeah, thanks. I hate it.
Gross.
Number 7, Nerd Girl. What's your number 7?
So my number 7 is, now we're starting to get onto the world of competitive Magic. This is one of the few bugs that had some play in Standard and actually has kind of stood the test of time and is still being played in some sideboards. This card is good for a number of reasons because it targets specific deck types as well as a particular color. And we're going to go ahead and put BLIGHTBEETLE at number 7 for our Pest category. BLIGHTBEETLE is a 1/1 for 2 mana, colorless and a black. It is a creature type insect. It has protection from green, and creatures your opponents control can't have +1/+1 counters put onto them. So this kind of shuts down some decks and is still seeing a fair amount of play in Modern with we're seeing it in the board for like Yawgmoth decks and a bunch of other things.
I'm surprised I don't see this more often in historic best of 3 lists, because the mono white, green white life gain deck is so annoying. But this would be absolutely huge in that matchup. But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was part of a cycle that I believe included Combust as well. I mean, they did a very good job of this one also had Unchained Berserker, actually. Which the hate cards that they printed, they were kind of scared of printing hate cards for a second there. I liked this cycle. This cycle was really fun.
One of the things that, I kind of began Magic with was that circles of protection would always exist. Circles of protection white through green, later they did artifact and like Urza's Block or whatever. But like there's a whole thing about circles of protection exist, and your default sideboard would be 3 of each or whatever because you didn't know what else to do. But they also had very hardcore destroy all islands, destroy all planes, chill, stuff like that. And then they moved like way away from that, just big time. We really don't want to hate so much on the color pie, and then they kind of moved back towards it, and then they moved away again, and then they moved back towards it. And I don't know. Honestly, I feel better having those real like hardcore, you have answers to serious problems than mitigating questionable maybe I can hate out the white deck with this card type things. You know?
Nowadays, they're not going to print as many of these because the arena best of one drives the bus for a lot of creative card design. They don't really want to have protection from a thing and effect against a thing, but that's useless against, half the field or 75% of the field.
Right. Reuben, what's number 7?
My number 7 is the last of the cards that is really going to upset everybody because it doesn't say insect on the type line. There was a time when this was my favorite creature land. It did see some amount of competitive play in land still decks and in the 40 land decks. But was also in a deck called Hunting Grounds, which was a ton of fun. It was sort of like a Bant control deck at the time. And one of the things you wanted to do was get to thresholds that you could turn on your Hunting Grounds and also turn on your NANTUKO monasteries.
Nice.
NANTUKO Monastery taps for a Wingding, taps for a colorless, and then only has its second ability when you have Threshold, which means that you need 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Pay a green and a white, and it becomes a 4/4 green and white insect monk creature token with first strike until the end of the turn. It's still a land. Activate only if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard. 4/4 first strike is massive. There is nothing bigger on the battlefield.
Yeah, you need a lot of things to throw in front of that bus, and then oopsie, they have a pump spell or a removal spell, and then game over. No, that's definitely a good one. I have a few cards that do not have insect on the creature type line, so I get you there. I think this is a really good addition.
Well, I'm very basic like that. I think all of mine do in some way, but it's fine because this is exciting and interesting. This is one of those cards that I just wished so hard that this was better. This was in my first cube, and it's just not as good as other green white options, unfortunately, in terms of man lands and stuff. Sure. But damn, it reads incredibly excited, and I can only imagine how good this was in limited. This thing was.
It was insane. Bananas. This card was insane in limited.
This is my highest ranking spider on my list, though there's nothing wrong with that if there are other spiders out there. This is the spider that I recall being super duper powerful. Not only was it a cube all-star at the time when they're we're kind of reaching for good cards that would hate on things like flyers, but for this spider to sort of show the power that you can have when creatures get, they just get a little bit of juice, a little extra juice when they showed up in Onslaught. For Silklash Spider. Mm-hmm. Silklash Spider is 2 green, 3 generic mana for a 2/7. A 2/7. That's a 7 on the boot. And I'm pretty sure there's never been a spider up to that point that had 7 toughness. But whatever. 5 mana for your 2/7 rare spider with reach. And for 2 green and X generic mana, it deals X damage to each creature with flying. And wipe your board. Nice Bitter Blossom. Get on out of here. Go. Get you. This was sweet. I love this card.
This card's great. I wish that this had seen more competitive play. They should reprint this because I think it's good still.
It'd be nice.
Just having a built-in Hurricane is really good. 2/7 for 5 is acceptable stats. It can stand in front of a Baneslayer Angel or whatever. And it's super flavorful. And we've got enough random dragon token producers that this might be good.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those these days.
I mean, this card would be sick against the dragon deck, right?
It'd be sick against the dragon deck. It'd be really
block
good.
Everything.
Even if your opponent is just playing a Phoenix of some kind in their deck, this card's just good.
Yeah, card's sweet. All right, now we move on to number 6. Mine is higher on someone else's list. Reuben, what is your number 6?
My number 6 and my number 5 are both higher on somebody else's list.
Goodness, Nerd Girl, what's your number 6?
My 6, 5, and 4 are all higher on someone else's list. So I will not be seeing you guys for a bit.
Whoa. All right. Well, so we missed number 6.
Yes.
Whoosh. We almost missed number 5. Thanks to me having a number 5, which I like a lot. This is a card that I don't know. I don't think it's the first of its kind because I'm old and I can't remember exactly which one went which. I think it's one of the second or third of its kind. But when I came back to Magic and right around when Darksteel was released, This card was still seeing play, and this card was definitely sweet. And this card actually showed at the time that there was some amount of danger when you allow people to sack a creature for absolutely no mana whatsoever, and that's NANTUKO HUSK. Speaking of NANTUKO things, NANTUKO HUSK is a black and 2 generic mana for a 2/2 common zombie insect, and it has sacrifice a creature : it gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
This was my number 6. I was right there with you.
Nice.
Phyrexian Ghoul was the first card with the 2/2 for 3 with this line of text, which was a zombie. They then made this version in Onslaught. And yeah, NANTUKO HUSK has been a good part of several top tier decks, including but not limited to Abzan Rally. Back in the day, this was a big part of comboing off with Rally of the Ancestors. You would get back your Zulaport Cutthroats, you'd get back whatever else had happened to die that game, you'd get back a NANTUKO HUSK, and then burn your opponent out effectively.
Yeah, this was on my short list of cards, and this one the only reason I cut it is because I knew it would make it onto your guys' list, and I didn't want to have to decide between anything else. So I kind of cheated in an 11th card.
Nice.
This was a very iconic pest, as it were, and definitely deserves to be on a list.
Yeah,
I feel metagamed.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of building the list is being like, I don't think this card's going to be on somebody's list. NANTUKO HUSK in particular, though, it just is always good when it's in standard. Like so the first time it was in standard, it was a zombie insect.
Right.
Was it just an insect the first time they printed?
No, it was a zombie insect.
It was a zombie insect.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always been playable in every single time they've printed it.
Yeah.
Aristocrats decks, rally decks, even just zombies decks back in Onslaught, it was fine. And this is a card that they don't print anymore. They don't give us free sacrifice outlets.
It's true. All right. That said, let's move on here to number 4. Reuben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is a card so this is the highest pest on my list.
Okay.
Not a ton. I think this is the only pest on my list.
I'll say.
But it's on my list for a very important reason, and that is because it has been a cornerstone of an archetype for a very, very, very long time, and it's also maybe the first card I've ever included with the battle cry ability. Signal Pest is my number 4.
Nice.
Signal Pest is a generic mana for an artifact creature Pest, originally from Mirrodin Besieged. It's an 0/1 with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. And Signal Pest can't be blocked except for by creatures with flying or reach. Very popular in Affinity, Tempered Steel, Kuldotha Rebirth decks. Anything having to do specifically with artifacts can take specific advantage of it, but especially those decks that have things like Arcbound Ravager in them.
I love that Affinity, one of the, good creatures in it, is a pest. Because when I think of Affinity, I think of these little pests that just kind of come out very quickly and do a thing. So this is a very iconic card, and I think fits the theme very well.
This was just one of those really wonderful 1-drops in that by itself, fine, right? It's whatever. Even 2 of them is kind of whatever. But once you make almost any number of tokens, you're like, oh my God, I have to kill that Signal Pest because it's going to ruin my life. And that is this weird power in this awesome 0/1, and that's awesome. And I love it.
You just play an Inkmoth or a Blinkmoth Nexus, an Ornithopter, and a Signal Pest, and it's that's almost good enough.
A clock is
not
born.
Not to mention all the other 2-drops. Once you throw a Cranial Plating onto the board, who cares?
Signal Pest is great. All right, for my number 4 here, this was, I believe this card is the most recently newly created on my list. And this card was both super cool, from the moment I heard about sort of what it did and the way it kind of worked. I got to play with it in some standard decks. This is another one of those cards that I just wish it was so much better, because you can't not read Luminous Broodmoth and go, damn, that's an awesome ability. For number 8 on Nerd Girl's list as well, Put that right there. This card was fantastic. This card was also Mothra, for God's sakes, because they were doing the Godzilla stuff and the Ikoria Lair of Behemoths set, which was great. Luminous Broodmoth is or Mothra Supersonic Queen, is 2 white, 2 generic mana for a mythic insect. It's a 3/4 flyer, and whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. That's just wonderful.
This card was
so this was on my list when I was going through the bugs and pests and things. I instinctively, so what I do is I kind of just put them on the list where I feel-ish they'll go and fill in the gaps, and then sometimes I have to adjust. And this, like, I snapped it off top 3 or something because I'm like, man, this is so cool. And then I'm like, but it's kind of bad, and it didn't really see any play, so it's like it got pushed down, unfortunately. Yeah. But this is super cool, and it being Mothra was really fun. And then its ability was very unique, and I thought this is one of the pedestal bugs or insects or pests that we've seen, and it's also just a beautiful card.
Yeah, I mean, it is a 3/4 for 4. Like, those are Linvala stats. Those are Restoration Angel stats. That thing can survive a lightning bolt and fly over for damage. But it's also wrath protection. It's crazy wrath protection. In fact, it makes everything that they tried to clear better by putting them back into play. With evasion, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, this card is very, very powerful. It was a complete, utter bomb in limited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this card
Did you know that if you have mutated things and they kill the mutated stack with the Mothra, they all come back?
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's awesome. This card is great. This card is like, this is one of those cards that's just going to come up every now and then. We need some weird loop with like 2 other cards or 2 other creatures. And like, well, once you get the Mothra on the thing, you can do this and get rid of the flying counter some way and yada, 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 yada.
Right.
Awesome.
Plus it's Mothra, which is the second most iconic Godzilla monster that isn't Godzilla.
All right. So now we get to move on here to, I agree with you. For number 3, this is my last hire, and that's fine because it's awesome. But Nerd Girl, what's your number 3?
So my number 3, it is probably in my top 3 unjustified. But I put it there because of the warm, fuzzy feelings I get when I play this card. It didn't, have its time in the light for very long, but when it did, it was amazing. And I cannot think of another single pest that I enjoy playing more than getting to KRAUL Harpooner, your darn golden goose. Mm-hmm. And it is the best thing you could be doing in Magic. And it makes you feel, even if you lose, you still feel like you won. It's a moral victory, and it deserves a spot in my top 3. KRAUL Harpooner is mwah. So you are a 3/2 for 2 insect warrior with reach. And then when it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target creature with flying you don't control. KRAUL Harpooner gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Then you may have KRAUL Harpooner fight that creature. So it just kills geese. Yeah. It just kills them dead, and it makes me super happy.
This card is so above rate. Like, even now,
so
like
this
card, like a 2 mana 3/2 reach, you could have just stopped, and I'd been like, all right, what does it do now?
Right.
Oh, it kills things.
Yeah,
like,
it also
what?
kills things when it comes into play.
Yeah, it kills dragons and stuff. It kills their geese every freaking time. Like, what? This thing seems fantastic, and it was. This card was awesome. This card, if I recall correctly, actually saw some constructed play.
Oh, saw a ton of constructed.
Yeah, it was, especially because of the geese. It was.
Yeah.
I put it in main deck. It was sideboardable for sure.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those that, like, look at how far the stats are on this card. It's a 4-cent uncommon that doesn't really move any needles, but, again, on the rate, it's absolutely fantastic. All right, Reuben, what's number 3?
So my number 3 is the last hire that I have on somebody else's list.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we are moving on to number 2. Reuben, what's number 2?
My number 2 is a great one. My number 2, we've talked, when we do these top 10 lists, sometimes we will get these absolutely insane tribal cards that go in other tribal decks. Like when we did Giants, I had the zombie giant that went in the zombie decks and stuff like that. And sometimes we'll get like these support cards that actually end up being the most Click Slither in Sliver decks or in Goblin decks, for example, is another good example. This is another one of those because the most dangerous thing out of an Elf's deck is a Wirewood Symbiote.
My number 3.
My number 6.
Nice.
Yeah. Wirewood Symbiote is a green mana for a 1/1 insect originally from Scourge. You return an elf you control to its owner's hand, untap target creature. Activate only once each turn.
Did you know the foil of this card is $73?
Oh my gosh.
Ouch. Yeah, this card is nuts. This is one of those cards that like I remember distinctly. I was like, wait, it's not an elf, but it untaps the elf, but that makes it insane because there's so many cool things you can do with Wirewood Symbiote when you're trying to make 1 million mana and 1 million dudes. And yeah, this card is absolutely amazing and did great work both constructed wise, cube wise. Like I've played this card in a whole bunch of different variety of environments, and it's awesome.
Yeah, this card is the most important thing to bolt typically when you're playing against the Elf deck, not only because it can't return itself because it's an insect, but also because it starts all these ridiculous chains that you can do, not only returning elves to your hand to be able to continue to drawing off of things like Glimpse of Nature, but also be able to untap your Elvish Archdruids or even just your, extra elf to get more Heritage Druid mana.
Yeah, this is it actually doesn't surprise me because Elves is such a good iconic deck that people love. Those are the types of things people tend to foil out. So it doesn't surprise me that it's worth so much. And this is one of the key pieces and definitely something that needs to be removed more so than any of the elves, in general, which is very interesting to see from not an elf.
And, to me, it's one of the reasons you have to bolt this guy, first is that the cost of its ability is returning an elf to your hand. So if you try to kill another elf, they'll return it as a cost. You can't respond to that. It's a cost. You've already lost at that point, and that's just feel bads, man. This card is sweet. Nerd Girl, what's number 2?
My number 2?
Yep, your number 2.
Sorry, I dog barked right as you said that. So my number 2 we actually did touch on a little bit, and I think that is one of the most iconic insects, and that is Delver of Secrets.
Yeah.
Now, the front side of this card is not an insect, but he, if you look at the picture, he's like an insect collector. This is one of the coolest arts. This is also one of the first arts I remember seeing as a flip playmat, which is really cool. But on the back side, he does indeed turn into an insect. On the front side, he is 1 mana for a 1/1. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If it was an instant or sorcery card, you may reveal and then transform Delver of Secrets. It turns into a 3/2 flyer. And this is just a deck in Modern. And it's a very powerful deck. And now we're seeing it a ton in Historic and even in Standard for a little bit as well.
I don't want a card better than Delver of Secrets to exist. You know what I mean? Like, Delver's going to Delver until they make a better Delver. And I don't think you want a better Delver because Delver is unique in what it does. It's cool. It's interesting gameplay. It varies from game to game. And it's very powerful. And it doesn't need anything better than what it is right now.
We had a red, blue, and green deck in Legacy called Canadian Threshold for a very long time. It was red, blue, and green, 1 mana spells, tempo things, Force of Will Daze, Nimble Mongoose, and like Werebear. And then they printed Tarmogoyf, and then it was like, wow, it's a Rug Delver's getting, or a Rug Canadian Threshold's even better. Then they printed Delver of Secrets, and the whole deck changed focus. It got way more cantrips than previously. The deck used to run, I think, 16 creatures. Now it runs 12 or less in the main deck. That's because you can play even fewer creatures with your Miracle Grow strategy when all you need to do is find your 1 creature with evasion and play Protect the Queen. And a lot of games will just go turn 1 Delver, daze your thing, turn it over, and attack you 7 times.
Enforce Will anything you do to try to stop it, daze the other stuff, counter the other stuff, like whatever it takes so that you don't stop my Delver from beating you to death. And then you do kill the Delver, and then they lightning bolt you to death. Right. And you're like, exactly. Why did you do that? Well, for my number 2, clearly this is on both y'all's list somewhere. This is a card that I love a lot because it's just like, it's not the sort of, I would argue, sort of the most powerful. I think that was already Wildwood Symbiote. But to me, it's one of those that just like really is evocative of an insect. Like if someone said, what is a cool insect in Magic? Like beyond my number 1, which is like my personal favorite thing, my number 1 insect to throw down would be Scute Swarm. Yeah. Scute Swarm showed up in Zendikar Rising. It's her number 4, which is great. Your number 3, which is awesome. But yeah, this card is a definite favorite. It came from Scute Mob, from the original Zendikar, but Scute Swarm is even more powerful. Yeah. It is a green and 2 generic mana for a rare insect that has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, you create a token that's a copy of Scute Swarm instead, and boy, that gets out of control really quickly.
Yeah, this is seeing play in every format. It's a bomb and limited. It's great in the cube. In the current cube on Arena, you can actually play this with the companion, the Simic companion, and the Scute Swarms themselves have the same 3 CMC costs, and you get to draw a bajillion cards, which was tons of fun. Definitely recommend. And again, I've seen this on an EDH table. I've seen this in all sorts of things. It is one of the most iconic, fan favorite insects, I think, of all time. Yeah.
I want to, so two things. One, I do want to shout out Scute Mob, which is a 1/1 for 1 that won a Pro Tour in Naya Lightsaber. We always make fun of Naya Lightsaber whenever it comes up, but here we are. It was also a part of Next Level Bant. It was one of like the craziest things you could search for with your Ranger Vios, but regardless, Scute Swarm, anytime a card does something that changes the game in some way, it gets to be put on the list. This is the card that put a roof on MTG Arena, right? This is the card that said you can't have more than 250 creatures at a time. This is the card that said you have a cap. Like, we can't be making the code for 8 million tokens anymore. And that's what Scute Swarm is. And it's a card that can win a game by itself.
And look, if we're going to bring up Naya Lightsaber, you can't bring it up and not note that it has 4 noble hierarchs and only 4 untapped green sources on turn 1. I will never get over that.
Yeah. Well, it's a 2-drop in that deck.
It's a 2-drop. Move here to our number 1. Nerd Girl, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is similar to Reuben's list in that it doesn't have bug in the creature type here. This has got to be the end all be all bug, right? And that is LOLTH, the Spider Queen.
Oh, sure. I like
this
it.
5 mana planeswalker is 3 colorless black with a static ability. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a loyalty counter on LOLTH, Spider Queen. For 0, you can draw a card, lose a life. For -3, you can create 2 2/1 black spider creature tokens with menace and reach. And for -8, you get an emblem with whenever an opponent is dealt damage by 1 or more creatures you control. If that player lost less than 8 life this turn, they lose life equal to the difference instead. And then it comes into play with 4 power. This is a staple in Standard, right? Like, this is one of the things, this is one of the best targets to get back with Blood on the Snow. Yep. This is just kind of running the House of Black right now. And she's literally the Spider Queen and deserves a spot at the top of our list.
I mean, also just one of those cards that it's like really frustrating after a while to play against, because the more of the stuff that you kill that she created, she gets the counters sort of back, as it were, almost as a rebate in many ways. If you kill one more thing, she just gets to make the spiders all over again. The spiders have menace, which is going to get around your defenses most of the time. So that's, again, very kind of frustrated. You finally kill the freaking LOLTH, and here comes another LOLTH, and suddenly they have 4 spiders that have menace and reach, and it's just like, it's a lot. This card's a lot.
And these spiders attack well, they block well, they pump up the thing, and then immediately after, LOLTH gets her value back. So even if you do manage to get through them in a turn or 2, they've replaced their cards, they've killed 2 of your creatures, and then they just get her back with Blood on the Snow. She's an all-star.
Oof.
She also features prominently in the Drizzt Do'Urden novels. She is the primary guard of the Dark Seldarine, which is the Drow pantheon of gods. She has many nicknames and was included as a planeswalker because LOLTH, the queen of spiders, the demon queen of the demon web pits, isn't a planeswalker, but she is a god. And the way that gods work, if they can travel to multiple like worlds within D&D, they made them planeswalkers for the purposes of Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. She's a fascinating character, a fascinating god archetype, purely chaotic evil, and like the queen of ambition is like the best way that I can sort of quantify what her domain is all about.
Look, I'm ecstatic that they didn't try to make her like some kind of strange legendary creature or some legendary creature with some weird ability or a flip something or other. Like, it's cool. Like, let Gandalf be a planeswalker just like LOLTH is a planeswalker, and we just move on and have fun with our game.
Exactly right.
All right. Reuben, what's your number one?
Well, I feel a little bad for the card Ant Queen because we've had LOLTH, the queen of spiders, and my number one is Hornet Queen. Number 5 there. Yeah. Hornet Queen, 4 generic green for a 2/2 insect with flying and death touch that when she enters the battlefield, you create 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. This is 6 power, 6 toughness across 5 bodies in the sky, and oh, by the way, they all have death touch. Nothing puts the brakes on a game quite like a Hornet Queen. Nothing blinks, nothing reanimates quite as well as a Hornet Queen when all you're caring about is mid-range. This card is a first pick almost every time I see it in the Arena Cube. Oftentimes it's a high pick when I'm in the Vintage Cube because I'm a big proponent of, just mana dorks and giant green things in the Vintage Cube as well. This card's insane. Card's bonkers.
Yeah, this is one of the cards that can take you from like 20% to win this game to like 90% to win this game. It turns games around. It's like, you're beating me with 2 giant 6/6s or whatever. Okay, finally play my Hornet Queen. I get 2 good blocks and I can still kill you in the air. The death touch on so many different bodies is such a game changer, and I definitely won a lot of games in the Arena Cube with this queen this time around. It's great.
Yeah, this was your number 5. This was my number 6. Hornet Queen is the queen, and you have to recognize that if you don't have something else on my list like a Silk Lash Spider, the queen is going to come get you, and it's going to get real gross because you just lay out like this giant wall, and you're like, you got something? You got a pyroclasm or something?
Just the absolute windmill slam of, all right, we've got this standstill. Well, here's 5 evasive flyers that all trade up.
I love it. For my number 1 here, this must be Reuben's number 5 by process of elimination. And another one of those cards that if he hadn't put it on his list, I think he would also still be confident that I would be putting it on my list. It's fine. It still has its pedigree. There's no doubt about it. Now, there's a couple pedigrees here. One is that this card did absolutely see play in standard and Pro Tour level, high level play. It was terrific there. This card's also very famous for being spoiled incorrectly and having the entire community freak out over what they thought it was and then be disappointed in what it was and then see top tier Pro Tour play to shut them all up. And for me, this is not a magic card. This is Captain Tickles. All right. It's Giant Solifuge. Giant Solifuge is a rare originally from Guild Pact. It's 2 Gruul mana, green, red, and 2 generic. So 4 mana for a 4/1, originally spoiled as a 4/3 incorrectly, but a 4/1 rare insect with trample, haste, and shroud. It is so old. It doesn't even have all those abilities. It literally just says it can't be a target of spells or abilities because that's what we said back in the day. But it's great and it's awesome and I love it. And my buddy at the time, we were playing Cube and Giant Solifuge was in the Cube, and he was like, oh, that's Captain Tickles. And I thought that was just the silliest, dumbest name I ever heard for a scary spider that's going to kill you and eat you, that it was Captain Tickles. I wrote a song about it. You can Google it if you want. It's absolutely silly.
This was how I first heard of Evan Erwin. Was I didn't even know what the Magic Show was, my friend Nick Miller, at the time at Ohio University, was like, hey, check out this YouTube content creator in Magic. Didn't say content creator because that wasn't a thing yet. Check out this YouTube video maker making internet videos. I was like, all right, let's watch that. And I think the first video I watched was you playing Dragonstorm, but then like very quickly was the Magic show, and very early in the Magic show was giant Solifuge related content. This is the reason why a lot of people know who you are, is because you were making these stupid songs and silly memes. And Captain Tickles was part of that. It's on my list. Not because it has one Pro Tour victory. It actually has 2 Pro Tour victories.
Goodness.
Most famously in the CRAUL Beats deck that Mark Herberholt won at Pro Tour Honolulu in 2006, but was also one of the cards in the Rakdos aggro deck that Tamaharu Saito and team won at Grand Prix Charleston. Or not Grand Prix, Pro Tour Charleston.
Right.
And it's just, it was a house. It was so good against the control decks of the time because they'd wipe your board and then you'd play an untargetable thing. So they have to either waste another Wrath or just get hit in the face a bunch. Yeah, it was very, very good.
Right. It's like, you got to block with your Jushi Apprentice there, bruh. Like,
basically. Yeah, card's insane.
Yeah.
I think that this card would see play as, I think it would be very funny if Wizards made a card that was the previously spoiled version of this card. But instead of Shroud, it had hexproof. Yeah. Or something. I mean, like if they harkened back to the original. Right, exactly. It's how much how ridiculous would a 4/3 haste trample hexproof be compared to Questing Beast, right? Like, is that ridiculous? I don't really think so.
Yeah, I think that in a Modern Horizons 3 world, I could definitely see it and would not be surprised. But that said, that was our top 10 pests. You'll see them on screen right now if you review. Take a look at
top 10 bugs.
You and your bugs and your pests. All right, look.
Well, pest is a creature type that is part of the bugs with insects and spiders and slugs and worms and various
bugs and slugs, everybody. Look, that's right. You'll see our top 10 bugs, slugs, pests people on the screen right now if you review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Reuben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffing.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Reuben.
I want to once again thanks to, I believe, Axel Gear was once again the suggester for this particular topic. Keep bringing them. You're not bugging us.
Wow.
Yeah, you thought you were safe from the pun when I started giving out a thanks, and then I got you. I got you with the stinger at the end. See, another one. Ooh, they just keep on swarming at you.
Oh my God, Jesus! We're gonna go our final slide. We thank our sponsor. Oh God, for sponsor, cool stuff. Inc.com, our co-sponsors, cardorder.com and altersleeves.com. My co-hosts, MTG Nerdgirl and Reuben, stinging it on the buzzer, Bresler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.